whatever the case is. Each one was, went from 100, 130 to, in this case, for Verizon, 167 days for all their work to take place.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Selectman Metters. Any questions or comments for Tom?
Yes, I have one comment on the overlay of the pavement. I understand the response from Michael King and Mass Dot, but this is something I really want to stay on top of. I don't. There's no reason we should have that road in a poor condition for the summer. That West Chatham strip has been hurt economically with the shops, with some of this construction, which they knew about, and they've been good about it. The COVID-19 scenario has obviously added another blow. But I in no way, shape, or form I would accept not having that road cleaned up and leveled up to some degree for the summer. So I understand we'll keep in communication with them. You mentioned about sending the letter, but I want to be up front right now that I want that road cleaned up for the summer. I don't think anything short of that would be acceptable.
What I'll do is I'll send, I'll get a letter out to, an email out to all the parties with the state and tell them what the board's feeling is on this, and we'll move forward with that. I think the intent was to try to get as much done as they could and get that, if they could get it pulverized and, reshaped for the end of May. So when the summer came, they had at least that bindered. But I'll move forward with what you just indicated.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Corey. Selectman Dykens.
Yeah, I'm happy to see that the gas is getting laid correctly, and I echo Selectman Metter's concern about the top coating. Other than that, I take a pass. But at least there's some progress being made. It's good. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay. Any questions from the remote participants?
Yes, Frank Messina.
Go ahead, Frank.
I'd like to ask a question relative to the West Chatham hills and valleys. I understand about the cost in coating it, but I'd like to ask Tom a question. Is it possible just to scour, you use the term pulverizing, but to scour it at least to get some of the more significant hills and valleys and bumps taken care of? That's my question.
Yeah, Frank, to answer your question, I think their intent is just to try to get as much construction as they could get done. I don't think it was their intent to be relaying the gas and having the gas company having to delay everything on their part of it. So they have budget constraints, but certainly we'll sit down with them and make sure that they hear the orders going forward, making sure that road is smooth and rideable for the summertime versus what it is currently.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Tom. Any other questions or comments?
Yes, Blaine Gibbs. Yeah, this was one of the updates I had wanted, and I did read. I think we have to take it beyond just the District 5 engineer in terms of what condition it's going to be in the summer, and pulverizing. If they do pulverizing, if that's that deep thing, what would the condition be again for the roads in the summer? I've been hearing on news breaks that this is the one good thing coming out of this whole mess we're in is that roadway construction is really picking up because there's no traffic and they are really getting jobs done. So I would like to think that we would fall in that category and they would do whatever is necessary. There are ponds down in front of Ocean State Job Lot that they've been working on now for over a year. We've been into this for a year. And there are still these massive water holes every time it rains and they haven't been fixed. There's a lot of work to be done. So, which takes me to the fact that if I'm reading this correctly, it says that our target date for completion of this project is November of 2021. If they're not going to be doing any work until the fall, that means they can do this whole project in a year. I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a second. This is going to be a 2-year project based on the progress they've made to date. They haven't even finished the utility work that was supposed to be done a year ago. I think you need to push back on this. We need the business owners need a more realistic date than November of 21. That's just not going to happen. And so if that's what we're being promised, I think they're going to have to lay out a construction schedule that shows that that's going to happen. And I would hope you push back. And that road is almost impassable, and it is a mess. And if any tourists show up, they won't be coming back after this summer. If they have to contend with not only all the other issues we have, but with that mess, they're not going to come back anymore. They're going to say, let's chalk Chatham off the list for future reference. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Any other public participants, comments, or questions? Hearing none. Tom, I'm trying to work my way through this a little bit on the timeline and what you presented to us. A lot of what we're dealing with is the challenges around the fact that the gas lines were delayed, the process, and that companies' COVID policies are slowing down the process as well. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right now, if it was just the utility, if it was just the Verizon company going in there, the work would be going on because they can work in conjunction with Lawrence Lynch Corporation. So that's not the issue. It's the gas company and having them have the physical connections and charge their line up and also do all the services needed to all the businesses in the side streets. And until such time as that can take place, then they're going to be held up for, that roadway construction starting to do it doesn't make sense to come in and do a full depth reconstruction that's required as part of the plan in certain areas at both roundabouts if you can't go ahead and get in there and do the work with the utility company in the way and they haven't completed their end of things. So, I tend to think that realistically, they're not going to get in there till the fall with my own personal opinion, they're not going to get in there to do the full depth reconstruction until September if we don't get hit with a second round of this. If the contractor still can do his pulverizing and get that footprint set up if the gas company's out of the way. And that's the big thing, is making sure they can make all the necessary connections between now and May 30th, because you have that moratorium from May, Memorial Day to Labor Day. So that's the big issue. We just need to make sure they keep moving and get into that position. Even if they got the side streets off, we can still come in and do that work in September and wait for the side streets and those outside of the paved areas for their physical connections. It could still work, but I've heard the message loud and clear. I will make sure that we get them out here. Let's get this thing leveled once gas companies out of the main area there and have it ready for the fall here and for the summertime crowd.
Thank you, Tom. Just one more question. During the installation of the gas lines, the roads were passable and they still maintained that one lane people were able to move through there freely. Any issues with the passability of the road?
No, I haven't had any complaints here as far other than the puddling, of course, and they've had the silt sacks in the basin, which caused some even more puddling. But once they removed some of those, we had less issues with it. But I tend to agree with everybody that's spoken on behalf of the roadway conditions. I agree. I think it's deplorable. There's no way that the town of Chatham would have ever been able to keep that road in this condition that it's been throughout this winter month. So, I'll go ahead and make sure that we're making sure that this gets done and squared away before the onset of Memorial Day.
And Tom, would you need extra urging from the Board of Selectmen in any way, or would it suffice to say that you would be able to express our concerns?
I think I'll express your concerns. If I need any backing, I certainly won't hesitate to ask for your help. But I think what I'm going to do is send an email to all those parties that we've met with in the past, including their bosses, and make sure they hear what I'm saying. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Tom. Okay. And moving on to our next agenda item is discussion of the Nauset Beach Agreement extension, 1 year versus 3 years per our request. Dr. Duncanson, do you want to make the presentation?
Yes, Chairman Shireen. As the board knows, earlier this year, we came to the board and presented a revised proposal an agreement with Orleans. And at the time, we recommended a 3-year agreement versus 1-year agreements that have been done for the last couple of years. While Chatham reinvigorated our bird monitoring, started the North Beach Patrol back up again. By doing it in 1 year at those times, it gave the ability to kind of change things if we needed to. I think things are now in a good place out there. We have a great team working on the field, dealing with birds. Whiteman's been doing a phenomenal job trying to get the birds to nest as early as possible and get off the beach as early as possible. And so we had recommended to the board that we go with a 3-year agreement, kind of the way it always was, so that the boards didn't have to deal with it every year. We transmitted that request over to Orleans. They held a meeting, which they didn't advise us about, so we weren't able to participate in that meeting. And they subsequently came back and said they would prefer to have a 1-year agreement with a discussion in the fall to discuss the current allocation of non-resident revenue, which 75% goes to Orleans and 25% goes to Chatham. And as part of their discussion, and that's why we included minutes from the meeting, there was some concern over data collection. I can tell you that this afternoon I spent time looking at the data we did have. I did have a couple of drafts, which I will subsequently send out to the board and others in the next day or so. But in the meantime, we have an agreement that expires at the end of this month. So my recommendation to the board is to go ahead and sign the 1-year agreement. We'll pull the meeting with the boards in the fall in plenty of time to hash out any new agreement. And we'll give both Chatham, you and your Board of Selectmen the data that we have collected on usage. I can tell you that Paul emailed me earlier today and just said anecdotally on Saturday, which, as you may recall, is an absolutely beautiful day out there. Roughly 75% of the vehicles were in Chatham and 25% in Orleans, because Chatham is the one that, frankly, and we've been saying this for a couple of years now, has all the beach area. The available area in Orleans is very limited. But that's a discussion we can have of more substance in the fall when things have settled down a bit. So as I said, my recommendation to you is to go ahead and sign the 1-year agreement so we get something in place for this summer.
Thanks, Bob. I was surprised that they did meet without us notifying, without discussion with us, and was a little disappointed. But yeah, we're prepared. I'm prepared to sign this for a year and open to the discussion, simply for the fact that now is not a good time for a lot of folks, and our need is to get the operation going. So I'm just going to check in with everybody to see if anybody has any questions for Dr. Duncanson. Peter, do you have any questions?
No, Madam Chair. I noticed that in the minutes that came from from Orleans that they started with 3 years, and then they discussed the few things, and then they brought it down to a year. I agree with you. I think we can sign 1 year.
Okay, thank you. Selectman Nicastro.
I'm okay with 1 year. I express the same view that Peter just did. In fact, since I have the floor, I'll offer the motion that the board vote to extend the current agreement for 1 year to a new expiration date of April 30th, 2021. And if that's seconded and voted, I want to ask Shauna how we go about signing it. Can it be signed electronically so we don't have to come into town hall to sign anything physically?
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion down the line. Selectman Metters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I can support the recommendation of a 1-year extension and circle around in the fall to further discussions. I'm comfortable with that at the moment.
Thank you. Selectman Dykens?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm good with the year. I wasn't surprised that they discussed it without us. We'll meet with them in the fall and revisit it. I just want to put a plug in for Bob and his staff out there on the beach. They're doing a great job. They did a great job last year, and I'm sure they're on top of it again this year. A couple of digs in the minutes about us not being able to keep data, blah blah blah. So anyway, we'll revisit in the fall. But sign the 1 year and let's move on. We got more important things to do. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Any questions or comments from the remote participants? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Selectman Kokolas,
Aye.
Selectman Nicastro,
Aye.
Selectman Metters,
Aye.
Selectman Dykens.
Aye.
Chair says aye. All right, 5-0. Shauna, the question that Dean had presented was, how shall we go about signing the agreement? Is electronic signature okay?
I believe I can either use your signature stamps if you agree to that, or I can make arrangements to have the document available to you.
I'm fine with the signature stamp. Do we need to take a vote on that, or can we just by consensus tell you that to go ahead? I mean, I'm fine with that.
Consensus would be fine.
Okay. How does everybody feel? Dean?
Fine with me.
Corey?
Stamp away.
Jeff?
Ink it up.
All right. Peter?
Yeah, I didn't know I had a stamp.
All right, you've got consensus, Shauna. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on, we are on to the biggie for the night, the COVID-19 financial plan. Fiscal year 2021, annual town meeting 2020, funding priorities. The town manager and finance director will make the presentation. And I don't know who wants to go first, or whether you had a co-presentation, but I'll turn it over to Jill for direction.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chairman. So this is a pretty hefty agenda report that we separated the warrant article review, the financial warrant article review, into the second agenda item. So this one, what Alex will make a presentation on is basically our COVID-19 financial management plan that looks at where we are at FY20, our current fiscal year, and how we're doing with our revenues. And she'll also present the information that we've revisited from the last time the budget had been presented to the board where you had a vote, and that was from February 24th. So we've made a significant amount of reductions. Tonight, I'm not going to ask you to specifically vote on it because you still need a transmittal as well as the data behind it, which we'll present at the next meeting. But we did want to get it out there. And with the governor's order still in place, and so still looking at the date of a annual town meeting sometime before June 30th, and we can discuss that at the end of this report as well. And I don't want to forget that we still need to set the polling hours for the annual town election, and that's noted in the staff report as well, and our town clerk's available. So at this point, I know Alex and I, we've had a lot of discussions. We both have been taking webinars, been consulting other towns about what we think what's going to happen and the likely recession that's going to take place and how to adjust our forecasts accordingly. So I'm going to turn this over to Alex Halela, our finance director, for a report.
Thank you, Jill. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you very much. I have a brief PowerPoint that will go through some of the items contained within the memo. The memo contains a lot of information, as the town manager said, going over where we are right now and then looking forward. So I'm going to start the presentation, and I would like to, invite the board to ask questions as we go along, if that's okay.
Yes. So the board, just speak out with your questions to Alex. Don't wait to be called on. That would be the best mode of action, and that just pertains to the board, the selectmen board. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn off my camera and see if I can share my screen right now. So bear with me.
Okay.
Okay, can everybody see this?
Not, I can't, Alex.
Okay.
Nope.
Nope, that's not working. Let's try this again. Share. Is that working?
Yeah, you just have to,
Yeah.
it's minimized.
I'm going to do that.
Thank you.
Perfect.
All right. I'm still getting used to this remote presentation, but
You're doing a great job. You have a Excel present. You have a presentation up. That's pretty good.
so, okay. Excuse me. So, good evening, Alex Halala, Finance Director. And as the town manager stated, we've been looking at the current fiscal year 2020, where we're at, as well as the FY 2021 budgets, and even beyond that into the next 6 to 18 months, not knowing how much of a recession is likely to happen. So we've put information into the agenda report called the Coronavirus Financial Plan. So I think as we move forward to this, we know that this has caused financial uncertainty for the town as well as for everyone. But this could last up to the next 2 fiscal years. So what we do know is our financial world is uncertain, and FY 2020 to 2022 budget picture is unclear. For Chatham, this is good. 2020 is, we're in fairly good shape right now, but again, we put a freeze on non-essential spending, and we're monitoring our revenues as we go through. Municipalities are starting now to plan ahead for a possible 6 to 18th month recession. And again, that means planning today for not only FY 2021, but FY 2022 budgets. And then as the town manager has been communicating with the community and the Board of Selectmen, we need to know communication is a key to finding solutions. So the current fiscal year, FY 2020, which ends it's right around the corner, June 30th, 2020. As I mentioned, on March 23rd, we had a spending freeze for non-essential expenses. We're monitoring our tax bill payments. The Board of Selectmen granted the extension that the governor allowed us. So now tax bills are due June 1st. I'd like to point out to the public, as I always do, that please pay online is the easiest and best way to pay right now. And there's a drop box at Town Hall, and we're not accepting cash at this time. And if you are in financial difficulties, please contact the Treasurer's office. The Treasurer is happy to work with you to set up a payment plan. Partial payments are allowed. So if you can make weekly payments, that's good, but call the Treasurer's office and contact her either by email, sdrown@chatham-ma.gov, or call her. The information is on the website, as well as the online link to pay your tax bills.
Alex, this is Dean. How
Yes.
are the collections coming in today on this second half bill?
I'm happy to report the collections are very strong. We are getting a lot of the collections. People have said, yes, I know I have until June 1st, but I know this is due. I want to make payments. The mail has been very strong, as well as the online payments, and we're receiving some of the bank files right now too. The original due date was May 1st, so by the end of this week, we can give a report to the board where we're at and how much is still outstanding, but it has been very strong.
Thank you.
Okay, so through last Friday, we had $218,693 in COVID-19 related expenses. This does not include regular staff hours for regular time, not overtime. This does include the overtime, but we will be eligible for reimbursement under the FEMA declared disaster. So again, 75% reimbursement of eligible costs. So that includes equipment time for regular hours. So we're tracking all those hours that's spent on COVID-19, whether or not we get reimbursed for it. So that's where we are with FY 2020. We'll know more, as I said, by the end of this week where we close out. Luckily, we have made our local estimated receipts for the year. So we're not looking at a revenue shortfall on that aspect. Moving forward to FY 2021. Again, we've reviewed all the proposed budgets, the operating, the capital, annual town meeting articles, as well as the annual town meeting and election. And we continue to review the operating budget. So February 24th, we presented the operating budget at $32,552,330, which was a 5.36% increase over FY 2020. We proposed 3.5 new full-time equivalents, and the budgets contained about $803,000 in what we call the budget drivers, things over which we have no control: contracted services, some of the assessments that we receive. So those are some of the items that we've made up the 32.5 million. After review, and this number differs from the number that's in your report because we continue to go through the budget and comb every line item to see if there's any possible savings. So right now, we're at $32,040,207. That's a 3.4% increase over the current fiscal year of FY 2020. That budget includes no new staffing, and we're reviewing all those budget drivers to see if there are any potential savings within those. So we now have reductions of $512,123 from when we first presented the budget back on February 24th. So again, in your memo, we had 32,100,557 that we had identified at that time. We're still continuing to look to see if we can find any further reductions. So looking at this and how it impacts the tax rate and the tax levy and how it's funded, originally it was presented being funded by almost $32 million from the tax levy. Right now it's funded $31,481,007 from the tax levy and $559,200 from available funds such as the Waterways Improvement Fund, the Wetlands Protection Fund, the Cemetery Sale of Lots Fund, and the Land Bank Fund. So the reduction from the available funds was specifically for the wetlands, from the Wetlands Protection Fund, where we had removed the request for the additional personnel for the Assistant Conservation Agent. So that has, and the Wetlands Permit Coordinator, so we've reduced that amount of funding as well. And again, as I said, we're continuing to review the operating budget and ask department heads for any additional reductions that they might be able to offer. So I think I've just said that on this slide that, we're continuing to review and look for reductions in the amount raised through the tax levy and are looking at our core services. So again, what we reassessed the staffing needs. We removed that. That was almost $255,000 in staffing costs. We're reviewing the seasonal staffing levels, not knowing what's going to happen with some of the seasonal programs. We want to make sure that when we do open, that we're ready and we're staffed fully to open. But we don't know if some of those summer programs might be reduced because of COVID-19. And again, we're reviewing all the other department expense line items, the budget drivers, the percent increase, and looking at prior year actuals. So again, the big reason why we're looking at this is because we've reduced our local estimated receipts. Our forecast is now at 53% of our prior year actual, so $4,371,000. That again is a decline of $2.6 million, and that offset. The local receipts offset the amount that's raised through the tax levy. We'll continue to monitor those local estimated receipts and see if we can make any adjustments. But again, we were trying to be extremely conservative, knowing that the receipts from FY 2021 will be part of the budget drivers for FY 2022. Moving on to the capital budget, and this is the capital budget with reductions. We have reduced the capital budget from when it was originally presented by $470,000. So now we're down to a capital budget of $2,439,345, which reduces the amount coming from free cash. I think at your last meeting, we notified the board of the importance to keep the amount of free cash that we have on hand because it's an available source of funds. not knowing how much revenue is going to come in. That gives us a lot of flexibility moving forward, and it builds us into FY 2022 as well. So again, 2.1 million coming from free cash, and we're looking to have a balance of free cash moving forward of 2.5 million at this time. So some of the reductions, and this differs from the amount that we presented earlier. Some of the reductions in from February 24th, we've removed all these items: the comprehensive storage plan, permitting software, which will be funded through the Inspectional Services Revolving Fund, conservation land management. We're able to reduce the funding for the Mitchell River Bridge based on some of his estimates by $15,000. Town lending infrastructure, $10,000. We're deferring a shellfish outboard engine, $7,000. And then the two big ticket items for the DPW, the six-wheeler truck and the truck replacement. So again,
what is the
yes?
Comprehensive storage plan? What is the comprehensive storage plan? Please.
That was put in by Terry Whalen, and that was to look at storage around town. It would be a study to see what type of storage we need and what might be available. So we're going to defer that or see if there's an alternate way to fund that in the future. But right now we've taken that out of the capital plan.
Thank you.
Excuse me. So again, free cash was certified at almost 5.3 million. We've used some of it for the special town meeting, both in January and in March. For this upcoming annual town meeting, we have prior year bills of 4,798 that will be funded through free cash, as well as the reduced amount for the capital budget of $2,159,345, leaving a balance going forward of almost $2.6 million, which is a good balance to start us off because this will be needed for FY 2022's capital plan. So then we go forward and we're looking at some of the other capital articles. We've discussed these already, the ones that we have either presented to the board at a reduced amount. The OPEB funding, we're taking the amount out from, excuse me, cutting it in half from $300,000 down to $150,000 to be funded from the overlay surplus, which is an available source of funds that the Board of Assessors has released. We've reduced the Capital Stabilization Fund to $1.7 million. The Eldridge Public Library, funded through the tax levy and the Community Preservation Act. We're now looking at a reduced scope to protect the building, the roof and masonry repairs specifically. So $701,800, a savings of $695,200 to the tax rate.
Hey, Alex, Peter, I have to ask this question, although last week I thought reducing the scope of the Eldridge Public Library is the right way to go. I just have to ask it. Does this really have to be done this year, or can we wait? And I'm only asking. I don't want the I don't want the roof to fall down. I know there's leaks or whatever, but I just have to ask that question.
That's probably a better question for Terry Whalen, but I know when I did speak to him, he said that this has been on the Library Board of Trustees agenda and on his schedule for a long time, and there's water coming into the roof of the building. So yes, I suppose we could get more buckets, but I don't think that is necessarily what we want to do.
No, I would agree. I just had to ask the question. Thank you.
This is Dean. The Library Board of Trustees is meeting on Wednesday. I don't know if we want to get some input from them on it. I assume they're going to want to do whatever we can. But Peter asked a very good question. I mean, I favor it. I think it probably should be done this year, but if it's possible to defer it, I suppose it's worth asking the question one more time. And maybe since we're not going to be voting on anything tonight, perhaps Terry might be consulted further on it between now and next Monday. It's just a suggestion that I'm offering.
Yeah, I didn't realize that the trustees were meeting on Wednesday, so that could be a good item to discuss.
I'll be at that meeting, I hope.
I'm writing myself a note.
They meet at 4 o'clock. It's a virtual meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, good question. So the other capital items that, we've looked at, I think those will be discussed in the next separate agenda item. But we do have the dredging article as well as the child care voucher article that I think most of the members of the board have indicated are high priorities for them. So we'll talk about that in the next agenda item. So moving forward, I know there was interest in the Community Preservation Act and what sort of funding that might have for some of these articles. And just to remind the board and the public that the CPA requires that 10% of the estimated revenues are either expended or reserved for affordable housing, open space, and historic preservation. So that's 10% for each of those categories. For FY 2021, the Community Preservation Committee has recommended the following amounts: for affordable housing, $695,000, for open space, $115,000, which is the 10%, historic preservation, $351,500, and recreation, $337,900. The Community Preservation Act is not available to be used to offset any budgetary spending, and it can't be used for anything except for these categories. So I know that there was talk, could that help to reduce the amount on the tax rate, but unfortunately it's not available for that. There was also talk about providing more support for housing, specifically rentals, and whether we could do something like that. So, excuse me. We do have a fund balance in the Community Preservation Fund of $1,398,000, which is not committed. We are using some of the fund balance for some of the recommended amounts, but this would be the amount left over, which is available. And it is important to note that one of those categories of affordable housing is $150,000 for the rental voucher program that the town has funded in the past. And this was on their agenda on the Community Preservation Committee's requests to go forward. So there's $150,000 there, as well as $500,000 to be transferred into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which possibly could, depending on the guidelines, be made available due to some COVID-related issues. I'm not sure.
Alex?
Yes.
It's Dean. So is it possible that for a town meeting in June, say, to take up a subset of all the recommended articles and defer the remainder of the articles, the more project-oriented articles, to a special town meeting in the late summer or early fall? And I'm thinking, I know we're going to be talking about warrant articles in the next agenda item, but I'm thinking about the ones you have on the screen now, which are more or less the mandatory administrative ones. I guess we're bumping up the affordable housing. We could perhaps select out from the remainder of the articles, the Eldridge Public Library roof and the rental housing one. But are we obligated to put all of them forward at the same town meeting? I'm not aware of any rule that requires that, but you're the liaison to the CPC. And I would also understand that if we wanted to increase the rental assistance, the CPC committee would have to meet and make a recommendation on that to tap some of the uncommitted fund balance and present the recommendation to town meeting.
Yeah, that is correct. What we would recommend is that we could recommend that we meet the statutory requirements of either appropriating or reserving the 10% in each of the categories. We can also reserve an amount in a budgeted reserve, but then we could move the items that you might like to defer, say some of the recreation items, to the fall town meeting and just do those items, present the items, the Eldridge Public Library, as well as the affordable housing at the annual town meeting. And yes, the CPC would have to meet to recommend those, and the chairman of the board has already indicated that we might hold a remote meeting if this was to happen. So he's aware of that.
Thank you.
Alex, this is Jeff. So that fund balance, an uncommitted fund balance, could be also committed should the CPC meet again and decide that affordable rental housing was an appropriate use of those funds, and they voted it accordingly?
Yes, a portion of that could be. I mean, right now we have $150,000. That's what the Chatham Housing Authority had requested. They're the ones who manage it. And based on the number of applicants that they've had in the past who meet the criteria. But again, who knows with the COVID-19 impact that they may see a lot more applicants and, be able to provide more relief for those people.
And again, this is Jeff again. I haven't communicated with the chair of the CPC, but is there any appetite to relook at their recommendations and getting everything down to a 10% requirement for affordable housing, open space, and historic preservation, and kind of rethinking the priorities of the town for fiscal 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, you can see here by the amounts that they've recommended for all these articles, affordable housing was a priority for them.
Yes.
So that was nice to see this year. And then historic preservation was the next highest. Recreation, there were quite a few projects under the recreational category and only one under open space. But affordable housing was a high priority.
I agree, and I think that was really, with the 365 task force coming to bear, but that was pre-COVID. So I just wonder if there's any appetite at all for, I don't know if Jill has heard anything, Shireen, anybody has heard anything or any kind of appetite to revisit some of these articles and the prioritization of the amounts.
I haven't heard anything yet, Jeff.
Okay.
Imagine we might hear after this meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, and he has provided an email to us indicating that he's waiting to meet. The other thing that we talked about is how to bulk approve the articles as well, the CPC articles pre-COVID-19, but I'm sure that they'd be amenable to meet as soon as possible.
Okay, I think I'd be interested in a revisitation of some of the allocations, if you will, between the buckets, given COVID and the uncertainty in 21 and never mind 22, which Alex has brought up repeatedly and appropriately. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, I'm just agreeing with Jeff on the point you made.
Yeah, so, I know that the Community Preservation Coalition, of which the town is a member, has issued an email to all the towns saying, you can use this for affordable housing and for rentals. So we'll revisit that, and I will contact Michael Thompson, who is the chair of the CPC.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you very much.
Okay, so moving on. Again, some of the other capital items under a separate report, borrowing authorizations, Council on Aging, I know there's more to come on that, stormwater, and then the transfer station redesign. So, we've just gone through our priorities for FY 2021, the operating budget. We've cut that down. We've cut down the capital budget, other capital articles, looking at the available funding for some of those, and trying to go through and reduce other capital articles. And then, again, further discussion for the borrowing articles coming on the next agenda item. And that's what I have right now. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Alex, this is Jeff. You noted a $2,636,000 ask or need, if you will, that I think you're planning on, at least what I read in the package, covering some of that from the excess levy capacity, leaving a balance of 1.3 or 1.381 or thereabouts. Is that a correct statement?
Right now, because we had to reduce our local estimated receipts by the $2,636,000.
Right.
Also reduced available funds, mostly free cash.
Right.
So we can preserve that by $2,167,000. So that totals $4.7 million. If we use all of our excess levy capacity, the 1.25 million that we had programmed in there back when we presented the budget on February 24th,
Yeah,
that would leave no excess levy capacity. That's why we're looking at our local estimated receipts to see if we can, are comfortable raising that just a little bit so we can provide some excess levy capacity. That's why we're also looking at all these budgets to see if we can provide excess levy capacity, because we've always done that in the past. We've never taxed to the maximum. And right now we're looking at that, which would be an impact on our local taxpayers. And we know that, people are hurting and they might have a tough time trying to pay their tax bills. Even if we have a low tax rate, it's still, a large hit, and we're very sensitive to that.
yeah, I'm referring, yeah, thank you, Alex. I'm just referring to your projected shortfall of 1,380 in your memo. And I was just wondering what kind of impact would that have on the tax rate if that would end up in the levy?
This is the question I always hate to answer.
Well,
but,
I don't mean to put you don't need to answer right this second, but I mean, I can do it back in the envelope too, but I just think people are going to be asking that question if if we go back to looking at the levy to make up a shortfall, that's all.
Yeah, well, right now, if we use all this, it's looking at a 7.7% increase.
Yeah.
So, and that's why we had to find out, where we were still a little bit short. So, while I was looking to find out whether we could increase local estimated receipts, we looked at reducing the overlay account, the amount that we raised through for abatements and exemptions. And that's the way that I've gotten to this balanced budget as presented right now. By reducing that overlay, I've talked to the assessor and, I've notified her. So we have plenty in our overlay account right now that we don't have to raise the $300,000 that we usually do. So we're looking at reducing that down to about $106,000 to balance the budget at this time.
And that, Alex, that would balance the budget without an increase in the rate?
Oh, no, there's still be an increase in the rate.
Yeah, okay. But less of an increase you're not taking that 1,380 and tacking onto the rate is what I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, with utilizing the excess levy capacity, we had the shortfall of 1.3 million, and then we've made further reductions. So going through there, I think we had said that, the 7.74% increase over FY 2020 would be the increase to the tax rate.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have some more work to do. Yeah, okay.
Alex?
Yes.
I don't know if Jeff is finished.
No, I'm done. I'll be back probably, but I'm done. Thanks.
Okay. I just wanted to say generally, it looked like tonight versus what was submitted in the materials, you brought the shortfall of which was about 190,000 down another 60,000. Am I reading that right? You're down. So we have about $130,000, $40,000 shortfall.
Yeah, and as I said, right now, what I've done is I've made that up through reducing the amount that we raised for the abatements and provision for abatements account. So,
Right.
But we're still looking to identify any savings at all.
I just wanted to make the general comment, Madam Chair, that I had raised the idea previously a couple of weeks ago about a 1/12 budget month to month as the special legislation allows. But seeing the work that's been done by the town manager and Alex and the department heads and bringing this down to a core services budget that is feasible, it seems to me to make sense to move in that direction. I know we don't have the finals tonight. We're not going to vote tonight, but I do think it's appropriate and advisable if we can get a budget that's workable, that's doable, and that contains essentials. And I'm talking about the operating budget now. We haven't talked about the warrant articles that include spending provisions. I think that is the way to go. So I commend the work that's been done so far. I think we're moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, it's Peter.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I would agree. My first question, Alex sort of mentioned it. I mean, I think when we first started this, we've been talking about this for a few weeks. We were looking at let's see how far we can go with a bare budget. As indicated in our staff report, in some ways, what we have now is a full services budget, really a 2019 budget with 2021 cost figures put in there. In any budget discussion, like we've gone and they're going at 53% of expected revenues. That's harsh, and it may be correct and it may be not. We just don't know. And I agree that we should look at that number too, even a 1 or 2%, 54, 55. I don't know if that's good. And my question with that is, I'm a numbers guy. To me, subjectively, it sounds pretty good, but how do you come to a number like that? And I'm sure there's a little bit of subjectiveness in there. And I like the idea as we've gone through this process, we've had time to think about it, which is good, and time to talk about it. And as we continue to, I like to say, sharpen our pencil, we have to be careful that we don't break the point too, especially for what we're going to do in the future and what's going to happen to this town and the people that we need to support. So anyway, my question is, generally, how do you handle, or how did you come up with 53%? And I like the idea that you're deep diving into and cutting 10,000 here, 20,000 there. That shows to me, at least looking at what needs to be done. And if we get some more, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. As far as looking at the revenues, I think when we talked last week, we looked at, normally we budget 80% of our prior year actuals, and I looked at what 75% was, 60%, 62%, and 50%. And then going through each of those individual items, such as the hotel motel tax, the motor vehicles tax, licenses and permits, interest, looked to see what was actual. And I also looked back to the recession back in 2009 and 2010 and where we were then to come up with this 53% that I am fairly comfortable with moving forward.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
I have a question. Where in what bucket are we having expectations of continued COVID costs? I mean, $250,000 in 1 month is pretty substantial. Are we taking any of that extraneous costs into consideration when you're looking at all of this, Alex, or is it embedded into operation some sort somebody's budget?
Unmute myself. Yeah, it's a lot of money. A lot of it is for the cleaning that we've been doing of the buildings. The fact that due to social distancing, the DPW drivers, you can't have 2 people in a truck. They each have to take their own vehicle to social distance. So that's increasing some of the costs. Most of the costs for the town staff is embedded in the normal operating budget. So for staff time, that's embedded in our regular budget. However, the overtime, we'll get reimbursed for that. We will get reimbursed for some of the equipment time for the regular hours. So we're looking at all of that. But again, it's within the budgets, and we'll just have to see if we can make up any of the difference through budgetary transfers, which will have to happen at town meeting.
Okay. And any other questions for Alex? Okay, any questions from the remote participants?
Yes, Elaine Gibbs. I just had 2 quick questions. If I understand correctly, the revised for FY21 budget is still 3.4% over last year, FY20. So what is driving that 3.4% increase?
Thank you, Elaine. Yeah, we have what we call the budget drivers. So we have certain contractual obligations, such as for the cemetery mowing. The big one is probably for the sewer operations. Some of those went up. We do have contractual obligations for the staffing costs. So, and then some of the assessments that we have, our debt service budget's going up by 2.7%. So those are some of the drivers. I think I listed them last week. I don't know if I have them right here in front of me. I'm looking for them right now, if you bear with me.
Actually, Shauna has the page 3 of the staff report, if she can pull that up for us.
Yeah, in terms of debt service, with the interest rates going way down, we still are stuck with the higher debt service rates. Even though the bank numbers have really dropped 3 or 4 times.
Okay, Shauna just put this, put
There
that
it
up.
is.
Yeah.
There it
So
is.
there it is. So those are some of the budget drivers, the 802,000. And then we had $312,300 for contractual increases. Debt service is going up because we borrowed more. Well, we didn't borrow more, but we had permanent financing for some of the wastewater debt. So that's why it's going up. It's again a 0% loan. However, we do have some costs associated with that, principal and administrative costs under debt service. So we always look to see if we can refinance any debt. And at this time, the last time I talked to our financial advisors, it wasn't recommended. I am speaking to them again for any short-term borrowing to get us through June 30th at this time. So we'll continue to look at that and see if there's any savings.
Okay. And then I just have one other question, and this is probably a dumb question, but I don't know the answer, so I'm going to ask it. In terms of town employees that are non-essential, are they still being paid? Are they being paid their full salaries, even though they are not working?
So yes, we've deemed all of our town employees as essential. However, they're on rotating shifts and they all are getting paid for when they report, when they're working remotely, as well as the Federal CARE Act that provides an additional 80 hours of sick time that could be used by the employees.
80 hours per person?
Yes, if they were to become ill, they have an additional 80 hours of leave available.
Okay, but that's in addition, even though, a lot of them are, because it's rotational, it's part-time. I'm just looking at it in terms of the private sector where, non-essential employees are getting 0. So there is no place for us to save any money there.
No, at this time, there's no reduction in force. Again, all of the employees that are town employees are considered essential in some frame or format or another. So they are all getting paid currently for FY20, and the other towns are all doing the same.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the remote participants? Okay, hearing none. So our next steps are, we're taking no action tonight, correct? You are moving forward to find more deep diving into some cost savings. And when do we expect another report, Alex?
I think we'll have another report for you next week. We are continuing to look at this all the time, and Jill and I are, going through this almost on a daily basis, I think.
Yes. The update from Friday to Monday was, we see that you've made some changes in a matter of days. Okay. Any other comments from the board for Alex before we move on?
Yeah, I just got a quick one. So Alex and Jill, the amount you're looking for in the course of the next week is how much? What are you guys what are you seeking in terms of further cuts here?
I think we're looking for anything that we can get at this point. Again, recognizing that we want to provide any extra relief to the taxpayer to keep those tax bills lower. So any cuts that we can find, we're looking for it. The good news is that the budget is balanced, but
Right.
Again, that's an impact to the taxpayer that we're continuing to look for those cuts.
So are you looking for, I just want to be clear, are you looking for 193K, the 193,629, or you got that already solved through the overlay account?
I've solved that through the overlay account,
Yeah.
but again, that's an impact to the taxpayer that, their increase of 7.74%. So
Yeah.
again, trying to find any additional cuts and combing through as best as we can.
And I would echo the sentiments expressed by prior members of the board this evening that, you whack that anticipated receipts from 7 million to, down to 4. So you whacked at $2.6 million. So that's a lot of revenue not to assume. So I do applaud your efforts and the efforts of your staff and Jill to keep looking, because that was 80% of estimated receipts for this year. So anyway, good job. Keep it up, and I look forward to hearing the report next week. This isn't easy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay. So moving on, let me just move my papers around a little bit. Okay. Our next step is the 2020 annual town meeting warrant. We're talking about discussion of opening the warrant, the order of the warrant, the vote to recommend. Jill, are you making this presentation?
Yes. So I just don't want to lose track of it. So one of the items that we want the board to take action on is setting the polling hours for the June 25th, 2020 election that we presume we're still having on that day. There's been no relief by the governor to not have an election before June 30th. So I just want to remember for the board to set those polling hours as proposed from 12 noon to 6 p.m. on that day, and that's a Thursday.
Do we want to go ahead and do that before we discuss the rest of it, or do you want to just take it in order?
I can move forward on it. The staff report that you have, and I don't have a presentation tonight, it just notes how we got here for the uncertainty for the annual town meeting date, as well as where we are with the election. What I'm asking the board to do is to specifically open the warrant that was closed on March 23rd so that we can remove articles from that warrant to have a more streamlined warrant presented for the annual town meeting when that occurs, and close the warrant following the discussion so that we can get the new draft warrant together, as well as the information from the finance committee chair, myself, and the other appendixes. Just moving back to the budget. So once we meet with the board next week, we get a final, I guess, parameters of where we're going to go. Then we'll need the board to vote it and transmit it back to the finance committee so that they can commence their review. Alex already talked about the warrant articles as they relate to the CPC. So you have the funding by category here. And again, as we get to the end of this discussion, the matrix, which is called the scorecard that's presented in the warrant, I do want to go through that and get the board's opinion on it. In the staff report, I also noted the tentative ballot questions for debt exclusion. And the debt exclusion ballot question does not contain a dollar amount, but it does contain specifics so that the public knows what they're voting on, but it's also tied to a warrant article. So as we heard from town council last week, we could have an election and have a town meeting following it, but a vote would have to take, at town meeting would have to take place on or before September 15th for the ballot question. So again, it makes it a little more complicated. If you want to just bear with me, so the first question we had on is for the COA project at 1610 and 0 Main Street. Again, the number, the amount is not included in the ballot question, but the article that it references has the number, and it's at $8,279,777. We're going to have a presentation next week by the project team on the Stepping Stone COA alternative project, but also they've looked at the cost estimates for 1610 as well, and we'll present that as the final warrant article. So just so you keep that in mind, not too much of a difference, but they're still working on it, the project team. The second item relates to the transfer station project. And as you know, DPW Director Tom Temple had presented a potential phasing of the project. And just on last Friday, he got information from the consultant Weston & Sampson if we were to just take care of what we feel that are the OSHA issues for employee safety. And that figure came out to be about 340,000 up to 470,000. With the budget as tight as it is now, we would likely need to do some type of short-term borrowing for that if the board wanted to move forward with it. And that's to provide the ADA and OSHA repairs to the existing building under the current layout. So if there was a redesign, that's something to take into account, that this funding would be just under the existing conditions. Question 3 relates to the drainage and stormwater improvements that we had noted on Kroll Road and throughout other areas of the town, including Main Street and areas near the Fish Pier. And what we had thought was that we had in order to qualify for the 0 or 2% financing for the SRF, we had to take action by June 30th. We, on Friday, received notice that we can wait until October 16th to actually take action on that for 2020, but there is some risk in case there's not a town meeting. And this was an item that was a priority for the Board of Selectmen for the last couple of years. So I wanted to note that, and that the amount is $4,500,000. And then the last question is by petition, which would have to go on there, and that's the public advisory question regarding this increased security at the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station. So again, those are considered Article 1 of the annual town meeting, and the official positions for, as you know, the school committee, all of those will be on there too. So it's up to the board whether you want to add the ballot questions in addition to the officers that would be elected. And then at some point tonight, if we can get over to the scorecard, it's the Excel spreadsheet where we noted priorities as well as our staff recommendations, then hopefully we can open the warrant, discuss that, and close the warrant again. So I'll take a break right here and answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Jill? Jeff?
So, hi, folks. So are we going to rejigger this warrant here tonight? That's what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay. And the first article will be the ballot questions that you just read through. You know, the ballot questions, I think I want to hear the discussion from the rest of the board as well. But I certainly, you have to have the petition article number 4, debt exclusion. You know, when I read $4.5 million on the waterways, it's a big number. So I know that's been a high priority for quite a while. Debt exclusion, I would, you know, say we got to do the ADA OSHA repairs. I think we're crazy not to. Even though, you know, it's going to cost us between $340 and $470. And I'm concerned about putting a COA out there at this point in time, as even though, you know, I favor it, and I favor it at 1610, but I'm concerned about putting it out there, given the milieu, COVID, the need to conserve cash, and knowing, you know, not knowing what's happening going forward. I don't think it's going to get a good response or a positive response by the town. So that's my gut. Those are my thoughts. I have feelings about all the warrant articles as well. I very much think that for this annual meeting, should we have an annual meeting at the end of June, I would go forward with those articles that really allow us to run the town in a minimalist way. I would look towards having, you know, obviously the operating budget, the Monomoy Regional School budget. We could throw the agreement in there, then the regional technical high school budget, and the water operating department budget. And then I would wait to hear from my fellow select people here on what else they would put on there. But that I would go with a minimalist approach at the end of June. If we do have a meeting at the end of June, have an annual town meeting. The Council on Aging, I'm concerned about having the Council on Aging get a full and fair airing. And I would recommend, my feeling is, my recommendation is to push off those articles of major import into a fall special. If that's the way it can be done mechanically. I do think given the governor's direction, if we're able to pull off an annual by the end of June, we do so, and we do it with a minimalist approach, as I just described, with a fall special that brings up or certainly presents those major articles like the Council on Aging that really demand some more attention and a full and fair airing. And we also see where we are economically with the town economics and the rest of the economics in the fall. So those are my thoughts right now. I certainly want to hear from everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I think that we had all sort of set that tone last week when we talked in considering what we were looking at for this, if we were to do something this fall, this spring. I'm in total agreement with you on this. We've had a couple of discussions off-site in relationship to this, but I'm really interested to hear from the rest of the selectmen as well. And just I'll turn to Selectman Kokolas to see what his comments may be.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Selectman Dykens. If I look at the four questions that were asked, first of all, the COA. You know, I'm a strong supporter of the COA. I believe it's necessary. I believe it's going to be necessary in the future for this town. There are a lot of things that can be done. For whatever reasons now, we have two options. Stepping Stone will probably get done by the end of this week. We'll have a cost analysis. No matter what, those two, Stepping Stone and West Chatham, we've had two town meetings, which we've had people say, well, take a look at Stepping Stone. We have people that have said support 1610. I mean, I've been pretty vocal about supporting 1610, but at the same time, I believe that we spent the money for Stepping Stone, so it has to be discussed. I think that the COA probably should not be on the ballot, and I'd even think about not having it on a warrant, except that it's not except, but considering also that there's a citizen's petition, and I would think that the citizen's petition person that put it in would think very carefully about what they want to do with that. Debt exclusion on the residential article that has to do with the water and sewer. I'm wondering about that one. Do we do it now or later? It's a big number, but at the same time, it's infrastructure. And can we delay that until the fall? Maybe. I'd like to hear what others have said on that. You know, you get into a position where you could be hurting people in town. On the debt exclusion for the transfer station, yeah, that's an OSHA thing. That's an ADA requirement, and I don't think we should wait on that. And then the final one on Pilgrim Nuclear Power, I don't know. That could be an easy one to answer or not in that case. But on the other warrant articles that we're going to be looking at, which when we go down it, if you notice, I put a number of things that at the time, this is 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had priorities at that time, which are, you know, kind of important. I think a minimalist budget starting with, considering that I hate to use, I don't expect us to have a June meeting. It could happen. How it's going to happen, I don't know. But if we're going to have one, and I've heard all kinds of options, it should be something very short and able to able to fund and run the town properly. And there are a number of articles there that are opinionated things that are on there that maybe could be delayed. And I believe we have to have a fall town meeting, assuming we don't have assuming we're able to do that. But I think it's critical it's important that what we're doing is waiting until we hear from the governor on what can happen. And that's fine, because it's going to happen this week and we'll come back next week. But I agree, just to restate, I think we should have a minimalist budget. We should move ahead with funding the town, do the things that are important. And just because something may cost something now, if it's something that it has to be done to keep the infrastructure in, maybe we should do that, and then continue from there. Thank you.
Okay, so and I'll just bear with me, Dean and Corey. So do we need a motion to open the budget up to discuss it? Maybe that would be more efficient at this point. And I'm not cutting off Corey or Dean, but I'm just trying to move this along more efficiently.
Yes, so you would need a motion to open up the warrant.
Okay. Dean and Corey, you're welcome to make comments, or you can go ahead and make the motion to open the budget up and we can have the discussion more forthright.
Madam
Go ahead.
Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
This is Corey. I move we open up the warrant for discussion.
Okay, all right. Second, okay. Take a roll call. Selectman Kokolas,
Aye.
Selectman Dykens,
Aye.
Selectman Metters,
Aye.
Selectman Nacastro,
Aye.
and the chair says aye. Okay, all right. So in all fairness, I'll let
Madam
go ahead, Dean. Go ahead.
Thank you. I guess I'm generally in support of what Jeff and Peter said, but not as to all the particulars.
Okay.
I favor having an annual town meeting on June 22nd. And the special legislation allows a safety valve by giving the town moderator the option to extend the meeting date up to 30 days at a time, as long as the governor's emergency declaration is still in place. And he has to consult with the Board of Selectmen and get a certification from, I think, the health authorities in the town. So I'm not concerned that if we get close to June 22nd and it looks as though we can't physically have a town meeting, I'm not concerned that we won't have a solution for that, because the moderator, I think, will act appropriately. Secondly, I do agree we should have on the town warrant those items that are essential for running the town. And I talked earlier, and we all talked in terms of having a core services budget, which I think we're coming close to. And let me say that I think that as far as the warrant articles that should be on there, it should be the sort of traditional, non-controversial articles, such as we have at the top of the list. Shauna has placed the scorecard, the town election, the annual reports, the prior year bills, the salaries. I don't know if there's going to be a placeholder for budget adjustments. The revolving funds and the user fees, wastewater, those are all pretty straightforward things. Then we got the operating budget. We have the school assessments. I don't know if we need to do the school agreement. Jeff thought we might, maybe we shouldn't. I know it's not particularly controversial because I think it's just editorial stuff. I don't know which, and I guess I'd be guided by Tom Temple on which of the which of the water department water department articles are essential. Certainly the operating budget is. There are several down the list dealing with particular improvements. I have no problem with having the select board name change article. I think that's not controversial, and this is the year 2020, and I think it's probably important to get that done. But when it comes to the Council on Aging and 1610 Main Street, I am against removing that from the warrant, not because I want to have a discussion at the annual town meeting in May, but because by petition, by law, the other alternative of Stepping Stones Road is on the warrant. And regardless of what the organizers of that petition, of that article, may think or may intend to do, anybody on the floor can offer a motion to go forward with that. And I think we need to protect 1610 Main Street by keeping it on the warrant in case something like that should happen from the floor. So I'm against removing that. When we come to the ballot questions, I'm in favor of removing the 1610 Main Street debt exclusion article because I don't anticipate any conversation about 1610 Main Street if the meeting goes in a fair fashion. And we won't need to have that article, that question on the ballot. We can always put it on the ballot after a special town meeting. And frankly, what I would suggest and what I would hope, I might even move it myself at town meeting, is that all the petition articles, which have to be by law present on the warrant for the annual town meeting, a motion to defer consideration of those articles until a date certain at a special town meeting in perhaps August or September. So we don't have that discussion on those petition articles. And we won't have that discussion on 1610 Main Street in June. I think that's the better way to go. As far as the debt exclusion article for the transfer station, because we're talking about legal compliance with ADA and OSHA repairs, I would favor that. I favor keeping that on the ballot and keeping it on the warrant. I do understand, though, from what I think Jill was saying, or someone said it earlier, we may be spending that $340,000 to $770,000 on something that may have to be undone when we get to a permanent fix for the transfer station. But we owe it to our employees and to the public to make sure that the transfer station is ADA and OSHA compliant, so I would favor that. The debt exclusion article on the sewer project, on the drainage issues, stormwater collection, I sort of am where Peter is on that. It's a big ticket item, and perhaps we could be guided by Tom. But I think we need to, my sense is that Julie wants the ballot determined tonight so she can go forward. I think we, and let me chime in on that since Jill brought it up. My understanding is the state allows you to keep the polls open for a minimum of 4 hours, and Julie is proposing 6. I would certainly defer to her discretion whether she needs the full 6, but I'd be happy to support 4. It might make things safer for our election workers, many of whom are senior citizens. And I certainly think we should encourage everybody to vote by mail, to vote by absentee ballot or early ballot by mail. So in sum, I support a town meeting on June 22nd. I support having a warrant that includes those items necessary to provide core services. I support keeping 1610 Main Street on the warrant in order to protect it. But move to have it considered in the fall and not at June, and that we would also move to have all the petition articles considered in the fall and not in June. I didn't say anything about the CPC articles, but I think we should elect only those articles and put only those articles on the warrant that relate to administrative and budgetary aspects of the CPA program and the housing related ones and the Eldridge Public Library. Those are my. Which the Eldridge Library would also have to be on the main warrant too, because some of that is taxpayer money. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. We've opened this up, and we don't have to necessarily close this tonight, right, Jill? We can continue this discussion if we need more feedback on CPA stuff.
We could, with the understanding that you're not going to accept any petition articles. That's the one issue. And the sooner we can get it closed, the sooner we can get to production. If we indeed go to a June 22nd annual town meeting, we need to produce a warrant and have it mailed to each property owner as well.
All right, so our goal is to try to get this closed tonight if we're moving forward. I just had some questions. You know, as I looked at and thinking back on some of the conversations I've had with people, the child care voucher program, it could be a key instrumental program for moving forward if we do get people back to work, and I think it would be an essential article to remain on the warrant, and the dredging as well, because I think that speaks to continued commerce for the town. And I believe that that's a pretty essential sort of funding item. So Corey, I haven't heard from you yet, so my apologies for delay. But if you want to weigh in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, a lot has been said. I'm in agreement with the majority of things, so I'm going to try to summarize some of my own personal views. On the ballot, you know, the COA project for 1610, from a ballot perspective, I can see that being taken off. I have no issue with that at all. We will deal with that discussion more focused in the fall. Transfer station, the OSHA items. I don't think we have a choice. When we're talking about OSHA and safety and different compliance levels, I really think we have to address that. I don't think delaying that benefits anybody. So I'm very supportive of that. The debt exclusion article, item 3. You know, it's a big ticket. It's a big number. It's a big number. And I would love a little, you know, guidance saying one way or another. But at the moment, I'm leaning more toward keeping it on and moving forward with that. Obviously, the petition article, you know, that is what it is. It's all going to be on the article. I'm hoping that we can have a June meeting. Really essential budgets, as mentioned. You know, the first, you know, tier of our list here. The things that are, you know, basically are every town meeting articles, you know, the current standards that we've addressed, non-controversial. But I want to make sure the schools, you know, the Monomoy Regional School, the tech school, you know, we address the water budget. If we can take anything out of that, then fine. But I just want to make the June a very essentials for the warrant. Very simple, very clean. And push as much as we can off until the fall. I'm maybe not as strong in my feelings as Selectman DeCastro with 1610, but I understand the mechanics that we have a petition article for Stepping Stone because it's a petition article, it will move forward to the meeting. We know that. It's just that's the mechanics of it. So we've been saying that we've been trying to put both sites on an equal playing field, apples for apples, doing all the due diligence, traffic reports, etc. So I think it would be shortchanging everybody if we were to pull it out of the mix mechanically now. But I would stress that I would not, I guess, expect any type of action on it. And we would you know, as the petition article of Stepping Stone and the town article for 1610 could both be delayed for conversations at a more appropriate time. But mechanically, I'm not in favor of pulling it off right now. I just think it puts it on the same playing field as Stepping Stone. But understanding that we're not going to play politics with this, we're just gonna, you know, it'll have its time. It'll have its time. But you know, citizens are too worried right now. There's too much going on. You know, we just need to, you know, circle to our focus for the essential budgets. I'm trying to think. I'm in agreement with you on the child care voucher. I do think that is something that we should, you know, keep in play. It's going to be a key mechanism for many folks out there. You know, the dredging, the big ticket item. My understanding that number is coming because of you know, our unreliability of the county dredge, that we're dealing more with market rate companies, right? Possibly. So we got to keep that hefty number available. I'm not sure if you want to get into the polling hours and the mechanics of that. You know, I would like to know what we do have for availability for volunteers to operate that. I know the recommendation is, you know, or the minimum hours is 4 hours. We're offering possibly a 12 to 6 window. That doesn't have to be continuous. Can we do 12 to 2 and then 4 to 6? Is that an option? Breaking in 2 different windows. I don't know. I want to do anything that is to make that as streamlined as possible, as safe as possible for all our volunteers, and I would kind of defer to our town clerk for a little more guidance on what resources we really do have to hold it, and what is the safest recommendation that she would see in that process. Other than that, I think we're pretty much on the same page. Trim down the articles and hopefully move forward in June to get the essentials taken care of, and we can put everything else off into the fall. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have to talk about the process, and I want to move this along the best, most efficient way that we can do this. And so I'm looking for a little guidance here. Maybe, do we want to, do you want to take a particular item and just make a motion to remove it from the warrant now, go that way? Or do you want to take it down every single item for discussion and reorganizing? Go ahead.
Madam Chair, this is Peter. Just a thought. Why don't we do the easy one first? Pick the hours for the polling, and then we can get into what you said. Well, I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's talk about the polling hours then.
So we have the town clerk, Julie Smith, on this call if you want to hear from her.
I'd love to hear from Julie. Hi, Julie. Make me
Hi
muted.
there.
Hi.
Yep, I was muted. All right, so for town elections, Mass General Law requires that the polls must be open no later than 12 noon and open continuously for a minimum of 4 hours. I had proposed 12 noon opening and closing at 6 p.m. I picked 6 p.m. because if people who are back to work and working till 5 would have the opportunity to come in and vote in person if they were feeling comfortable enough to come to the polls. Hopefully 6 hours would limit exposure. I would prefer 4 hours, to be honest. I'm not sure what type of volunteers I'm going to be able to get. I have not reached out to people yet to find out who would be comfortable even with the proper PPEs. It's possible that no one would be comfortable coming. It's possible that I would have some who would be comfortable with the proper PPEs, broken down in 2 or 3 hour shifts. It's going to be interesting trying to cover those shifts, to be honest. Like I have in my memo, there is the option for this election for early voting, which is basically voting by mail. Absentee voting as well is always available. I've included the link to the early ballot application in the memo that I sent to you, and the application has also been uploaded to the town clerk's website. So I think that covers what we're discussing. If you have any questions, happy to answer.
Thank you. Whatever we do in encouraging any early ballot, by mail, we should try to promote as much as possible so people understand the opportunity that they have is a safe one. I'm open for a motion on the hours or discussion on the hours, or if anybody wants to move forward
Madam
with.
Chair,
Yes.
it's Dean. I move that the hours for voting in the annual town election be from 12 noon to 4 o'clock on June 25th.
This is Peter. I'll second it for discussion.
Okay.
And this is Jeff, Madam Chair. I understand the 4 hour window. That window does not include people that work and maybe work out of town that may want to vote and come in after 5, as Julie just noted. So I would be in favor of 12 to 6 or 12 to 2 and 4 to 6.
Okay.
So I'm not going to vote for 12 to 4.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
If I understood the clerk, breaking up the hours is not an option, has to be continuous.
Okay, yeah.
So with that being said, because I didn't realize that, along with Selectman Dykens, I do think we need to accommodate the working population. So I would vote for a 12 to 6 myself.
So would I.
I'll withdraw,
Uh,
I'll withdraw the motion. I'll withdraw the motion, Madam Chair, and if Peter withdraws the second, and I'll move that the polling hours be from 12 noon to 6 o'clock p.m.
Okay. Peter?
Can I make a comment before I withdraw?
I'm asking you to withdraw, and then we can talk about it.
Okay, I'll withdraw.
Okay, and, all right, thanks. All right, then we can discuss it. Go ahead, Peter. I'm sorry.
No, my comment was, is it necessary to start at 12? My concern is you have a certain amount of people. We don't know how many. It's still going to be a tough time out there, I think, for people to show up. What if we did 2 to 6? I mean, it's just another option. Unless you had enough people that you could go from 12 to 2, split it up the way Julie said. But what I'd rather have I'd push strongly for obviously for write-in votes, and secondly to minimize the amount of time that people have to be sitting there. That's the thought.
Okay.
So I could go to 12 to 6, but I prefer 2 to 6.
Yeah, I think this is Jeff. I think that's a good suggestion, Peter. I would support 12 to 6, and if Julie has trouble finding folks to staff, I would then have her back it down to 2 to 6. I mean, and that makes sense to me. But I think you have to have something after 5 p.m.
I think Julie said that you had to start, that law requires you to open the polls no later than 12 noon. Is that
Okay,
correct?
all right. I'm sorry. I missed that problem. I missed that nuance, maybe.
Yeah, I did too.
Well, I fell off for a while. I think I missed something.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for a 12 to 6.
Can we get that clarified from Julie? Because I thought she said that. If she didn't, that makes a difference.
Okay, Julie, can you weigh in on the start
Yes.
time? Go ahead.
No
Sorry.
later than.
Yes, Dean's correct. We do have to open by 12 noon, no later than 12 noon.
Thank you. Thank you. So the motion on the table is 12 to 6. We have a second. We've had any further discussion from the board? Okay, hearing none. Any discussion or questions from the remote participants?
I have a quick question.
Who is it?
Elaine Gibbs, this is very complicated for me. Is this June 25th date for the ballot questions only going to occur if the governor does not postpone everything and say you can do everything in September? In other words, I don't want to have this ballot vote on June 25th if we're not going to have an annual town meeting until September. I don't think people should be voting on anything until we've had a public discussion. So is this simply that we have to do it because Governor Baker hasn't made up his mind as to whether or not we can continue with a 1/12 budget and then have ballot questions and everything postponed until the fall?
So this relates to the town election, and at this time, there's no legislative relief that allows us to delay the town election beyond June 30th. And that's why the date has been selected for June 25th. That's for the town officers election. Whether the board decides to put on ballot questions is another issue. But we do have to set the polling hours so that we can set the election ballot and everything can go into motion.
All right, so in other words, we have to have something on June 25th. We have to open the polls, and it may or may not be just for the election of, school committee and selectmen. But we're not required to put the ballot questions on there, the debt exclusion questions. Does the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station have to be on there?
Yes, by petition.
Okay, so I guess my concern is that if we go forward with this, and it's simply to get town elections, we should not be voting on debt exclusion without an annual town meeting. So do we know when Governor Baker's going to make up his mind? because I think those things should be withheld so that we can decide whether or not we want to keep them off of this ballot and have another opportunity for debt exclusion ballot in the fall after we've had an annual town meeting.
Thank you.
Well, Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Dean.
the legislature, with the approval of the governor, has already authorized a town meeting to be extended beyond June 30th. What the board is considering tonight, we haven't voted yet, is to have a town meeting, the annual town meeting on June the 22nd, which is the date that the town manager has suggested. So it's conceivable we could have an election on June 25th if the legislature doesn't authorize an extension of that date, with the town meeting being deferred at the initiative of the moderator beyond June 22nd. And the election on the 25th would include the petition article on the nuclear power plant and any debt exclusion items that the selectmen decide to put on, or we've already voted to put them on. We could take them off tonight. And we've already indicated that there seems to be a consensus to removing one or more of those articles. But I think that's where we are. And I think the board should make a decision tonight about when to hold town meeting and what's to go on the warrant and what's to go on the ballot, so Julie can proceed to make arrangements for the election.
Okay, well, I guess I personally, I did not know that Governor Baker had already done that. I thought that was still the question, where we could continue having the government go on and using 1/12 moving forward, and then having an annual town meeting, and then the ballot questions after the annual town meeting in the fall, so that we can have a full vetting of this. My concern is that right now, voters are giving mixed messages. There are people who are full-time residents in Chatham who are stuck somewhere else in the United States. They've been told they shouldn't come home. If they're doing the right thing, they're staying there. So, but they vote here. So they've got to stay on top of this, and they've got to find out how they're going to get their absentee ballots, where they're going to be sent to. Can they do it electronically, or if they don't have a home somewhere, if they're staying with their kids, or ballots sent there? I mean, I think this is so, it's an unfortunate situation, but I think I've heard a lot about strategy as relative to the Council on Aging, but I haven't heard about what's the best thing for voters, where the most people can actually weigh in and participate. And the only way I see that happening is if all of this gets postponed until the fall, because we're not going to know until it's too late. And very few people are going to end up voting for the debt exclusion. They're going to be voting on very few people on the budget, and very few people for selectmen and the school committee. And I don't think that's the way to run a government. I think that we should assume that we are going to be in this situation for the next couple months and postpone everything, if we have that option, until the fall.
And it appears, please, Jill or Julie, again, it appears that we must have an election prior to June 30th. And that's why we are setting this election now for the date that we had specified, or we voted and specified last week. And so the question is, we are setting the polling time. That's our discussion right now. And we have a motion on the table about the polling time from 12 to 6. Relevant to that, because we are getting very late in the hour, relevant to that, is there any other remote participants who want to weigh in on the polling time of between 12 and 6 o'clock? Okay, hearing none, take a roll vote. Selectman Dykens.
Aye.
Selectman DeCastro.
Aye.
Selectman Metters.
Aye.
Selectman Kokolas.
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Okay, now to move forward.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I would ask the town manager and Julie Smith, Julie could clarify what is the process for requesting an absentee ballot.
Yes, Julie, can you weigh in on the, on how you request an absentee ballot? And if there needs to be any verification?
Could I please add one other thing? Is it
Sure.
possible that we could put that information on the website, on the main page on the website, and also perhaps even consider placing an advertisement or an announcement in the Cape Cod Chronicle so that people know they can vote by absentee ballot wherever they are?
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
sorry. Yes, we will absolutely advertise in as many places as we possibly can to educate people on how to get either an absentee ballot, or for this election, they're allowing early voting, early ballots. The applications are already uploaded to the town clerk's website. The link is there. It's all they need to do is fill out that application. They can email it to me, they can fax it to me, they can snail mail it to me, and the ballot will be mailed just as we do with absentee ballots. It will be mailed to wherever they are. It would be the actual ballot. It would not be an electronic ballot. It would be the physical ballot. There would be instructions in the ballot, just as we do with the absentees. If they prefer to apply for an absentee, it's the same process that we always use for absentee ballots. Nothing has changed. Application, any of those three methods, sent into the town clerk, and we will get those ballots out right as quickly as we can to our voters.
Thank you. One question, Julie, how long does it take for you to get the ballot all printed, or the state to get it printed, or however it's worked, however we do it?
Yeah, typically it's a couple of weeks once I have the wording set. I have all of the candidates I have prepared on my ballot, my mock ballot. Once I get the wording from you, once it is set, what questions you are planning to have on that ballot, I will get them right to the printer. It usually takes them a couple of weeks maximum. Because of COVID-19 and staffing, I don't know how long it will take them. I am required to have the ballots available to the voters no less than 3 weeks before the election. So I would like to get going as quickly as we possibly can on these.
Is the state helping to facilitate printing services for the election in any way?
Not for local elections. No. They print the ballots for the state elections, the federal elections, but I have a vendor that we go through for our local elections.
Okay. All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Yes.
Before we go over to the warrant, might I suggest that we finalize the questions on the ballot? So
Sure.
we finalize the ballot tonight. Julie already has the candidates for office. So I would move that we, since we've already approved 3 debt exclusion items, I think it remains for us to determine which ones we want to remove. The 4th question stays on the ballot. It's a petition question.
Yes.
So I move that we remove from the ballot question 1, which is debt exclusion for 1610 Main Street, that we maintain, and that we remove the debt exclusion for question 3. Remove question 3, which is the debt exclusion for the stormwater collection, and that we don't touch the debt exclusion for the scaled down version of the transfer station for ADA and OSHA compliance. So there would be just 2 questions on the ballot.
And this is Jeff, and I'll second that.
Okay, great. Further discussion?
Yeah, on question 2, should it remain? I think it's very, very important that we clearly delineate that it's just related to ADA and OSHA. I know you can't put that on the ballot question itself, but the education needs to be there that we're not asking for $4 million. We're asking for $300,000 to $400,000 to make the place safe for our employees and our users.
Great point. Any other discussion from the board? Corey?
No, I can support that. Removing 1610 at this time is the prudent thing to do. I would absolutely want to keep the transfer station with the requirements of OSHA and ADA items in play on the ballot. You know, removing the other debt exclusion article, number 3. It's a big ticket item. I can live with that. And of course, the 4th one's by petition, so it's
Okay.
not our call. So, yep, that's fine.
Great. Peter,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree. 1610 should come off, and we maintain the number 4 since it's a petition article, and also do what we need to do for OSHA. Just a comment on 1610 coming off. We're going to be talking about that on the warrant article. If anybody's out there that's supporting Stepping Stone, they ought to speak up. Thank you.
thank you. All right, moving forward, before we take a vote, any comments from the remote participants?
Actually, it's Jill, Madam Chairman. Since we still have Bob Duncanson on here, I just want him to speak briefly about what it means with the SRF funding for not moving forward for this ballot and having a fall town meeting if we want to move forward with the SRF funding.
Dr. Duncanson?
Yeah, thanks, Jill. You know, the information that we got from DEP was that the town would have to have their appropriation in place by October. I also, you know, so from an SRF perspective, you know, if we were to delay that until late summer, early fall, as long as we get it in place before October, we should be okay. But I do want to point out that part of the funding for that article is for the Kroll Road work phase 2. And also some portion of Kroll Road phase 1. So we were planning to get that project out to bid this summer, or shortly potentially for construction this summer or early fall. So that may put off some of that Kroll Road work.
Thank you, Dr. Duncanson. Any further questions for Dr. Duncanson from the board? Okay, hearing none. Any questions from the remote participants? Okay, hearing none. I'll take a roll call vote. Selectman Dykens.
Aye.
Selectman Matters.
Aye.
Selectman Nicastro.
Aye.
Selectman Kokolas.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay. Julie, you're all set. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so now we need to look at the warrant, and I'm looking for feedback on how you'd like to move through this and do it as efficiently as possible, seeing that we're still have an executive session to go through later after we do this. I'm not minimizing the importance of it. I'm just asking for a little brevity in our discussion as we move forward to get through this. So,
Madam Chair, I would prefer that the approach be to identify those warrant articles that we've already placed that we wish to remove.
that's a great idea.
Rather than going through them one by one.
I agree. Right.
And maybe they could all be done in one fell swoop of a motion.
Okay. All right. I'm looking for feedback to who wants to get started.
I'll give it a go, Shereen. This is Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
I would. What about, we're going to vote the capital?
We're voting to what we're going to remove from the warrant.
Actually, Madam Chair, I think if we can just go through the recommendations starting at 1, it's too important for us to miss something.
It is.
If you don't mind.
Okay, okay, that's fine.
So
okay.
I would include 1, include 2, include 3. Include 4 if there is a motion. Include 5. Whatever
Okay.
whatever 5.5 is. 6. 7. I mean, these both just go boom, boom, boom. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then I pause it. I pause at the capital. So that's open. I pause there because and then
We lost Jeff.
no, I'm here. I'm here.
You're not removing the cap. You're not making a determination on the capital item.
No, not yet. That's the only one I haven't. I paused on capital, Dean.
Okay,
On,
that's number 13.
that's number 13. Yes.
So okay.
Yeah,
ahead.
and then, I would, we already talked about COA. I would leave on.
Well,
knowing
you've skipped a couple. You've skipped a couple on the list. Collins Center.
As
That's to postpone.
Postpone. Peg.
So that would come out.
Yeah.
That would be removed. Okay. The
The PEG access is, we already have the funds in place. It's a transfer
It's a
that
transfer,
requires
it's
a vote
not-
by both towns.
So that stays. I would say the council on aging stays for now. We may not get moved, but it stays for now.
So that does not get removed.
Does not get removed for
Okay.
now. Doesn't mean it has to be moved, but
That's right.
capital, I would just leave on the ADA amounts.
So it's a transfer station project.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Okay. Go ahead.
Capital, stormwater, no.
Remove.
Remove. I guess Eldridge Library stays. And this is me, you guys can nuke me. Zoning bylaw, remove. CPA I would only move the CPA administrative budget. Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Housing Coordinator, Rental Assistance, Housing Institute.
What about the CPA reserves? There's a 10% requirement.
Reserves, yes,
Keep that.
yes,
And everything else is removed.
you got it. And yeah. Anything after Housing Institute, removed.
Okay.
Except for the Eldridge. The Eldridge Library roof.
Do we
the roof
need that? Do we need that money, or have we already?
Yeah.
Okay,
That
then Eldridge stays in. Childcare voucher is in, and dredging. When I look at dredging again, and I say it's in, but is it really 500K? I want to revisit that at some point. I would put that on Alex and Jill. OPEB trust reduced to 150 in. Well, all the water capital, that's all funded out of the water department budget. Does that have to be in, or can that stay? Can that wait?
The reason we would want it in is for a favorable bidding climate, hopefully.
Okay.
But it's already revenues on hand for
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So it's not, it doesn't affect the levy, and usually it's broom. So those are in. Water capital mains, water capital well number 3 in. And the interior improvements in. And we got to have the petition articles.
You skipped a couple.
I know, the Old Harbor reuse. I'd postpone that. That's going to get some airing. We need an airing on that, I think.
Yeah.
General bylaw. I think that waits. Select board is in.
And
Plastic bottles and climate policy and the nuclear plant, those are all petitions, guys. So those are in. The rest of it's in.
So are you offering that as a motion?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Okay. Further discussion.
Hope you followed that. I'm sorry, you guys. Hope you followed that. Okay.
I followed it. Jill, when we do this, do you want us to individually vote again to recommend them, or we can just go ahead and vote according to this motion, and that should be satisfactory.
I think you could either do a slate, a vote to recommend, but we will need you to do a vote to recommend. So if you want to do it with the motions with
Okay.
placing the articles, we usually do place in a separate article vote to recommend, if you want to just continue with that pattern.
Okay.
So the vote is not to remove, it's to place the ones that we're keeping? Is that what you're suggesting, rather than, because they're already on there? Everything's on there right now, believe me.
Well, I guess, yeah, then it's the opposite, to remove everything that Jeff had not indicated to keep.
Yeah, so shouldn't there be? Well, we have a motion on the table, which essentially removes several articles. I wrote them down, and I'm sure others have as well. I can go over them.
Why don't we, yeah.
Why don't you do that, Dean, please?
Dean, I think I identified the ones that, can you amend your motion? Go ahead.
To clarify the motion that's on the table.
Okay, thank
Okay, the only one he left open was the capital improvement on number 13, as to whether that stays or not.
Right.
I mean, I'd be inclined to leave it in. But,
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would too, Dean.
okay. So the motion is, as I understand, Madam Chair, is to remove, effectively remove the following items. The Collins Center comp plan, which has no number between 13 and 14.
Right.
Yeah.
The capital project on stormwater collection and drainage, which relates to ballot question 3.
Yep.
The protective zoning bylaw amendments relating to 1610 Main Street. And the following CPA items: the historical town clock, the town clerk archives and vault storage, the open space frost fish salt marsh, the recreation Revolutionary War Memorial, Pleasant Bay Community Boating ADA compliant dock, handicap access at beaches, Sears Park, Jackknife Cove Beach, Old Mill Boatyard access stairs, Old Colony Rail Trail milestone marker, Old Colony Rail Trail crossing lights, Seaside Links Golf Course invasive species removal, and you're keeping the dredging, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And childcare.
The childcare stays, the dredging stays. So the only other 2 items that would be removed would be the Old Harbor Road property reuse for affordable or attainable housing, and the general bylaw amendment on the date and time of town meeting. Everything else stays. Everything else stays. And the understanding on the CPA articles is that the ones we're removing now would be put back on at a special town meeting and what everybody's calling the fall, but I'm hoping it's going to be like in August or early September.
Yeah.
So that's the effect of the motion. The motion was to approve the maintaining of those items that are being proposed to maintain and remove the ones that he proposed to remove, and that's what I seconded.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank
All
you, Dean.
Thanks, Dean, for the clarification. Any further discussion from the board?
Yeah,
Okay.
This
Go
is-
ahead.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, just a quick discussion on the COA. It bothers me that, it bothers me that we're going to keep the COA on there because we have Stepping Stone on there as a citizen's petition. I haven't heard anything from Stepping Stone, and if I don't hear anything, I would agree with it. But I don't understand. I've heard that they might be involved. They might not push it. I guess I would like to be more optimistic about the people that are out there when we understand that we put something like a COA on there that we all want to care for, and we have a citizen's petition that's sitting there. It just rubs me wrong that's happening. If it's a way to protect what we're doing, fine. But from my point of view, we should not be having this on a warrant article that's going to go in June, potentially go in June. So anyway.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, somebody's still speaking. Could you just hold on, please?
That's fine, Madam Chair. I'm done.
Anybody, any other comments from the board? Okay,
Madam
go ahead.
Chair, Madam Chair, it's Dean.
Yes, Dean.
I think it's really not dispositive what the organizers of that petition article propose to do. They may very well propose not propose to offer a motion on their petition article, but that doesn't preclude someone else in the audience, in attendance, from offering a motion, as I understand the way the rules work, as outlined by Mr. Costello a couple of weeks ago. So that's the fear I have, that somebody will show up at that meeting and think, oh, wait, we can get 2/3 of the voters to support Stepping Stones Road, and then move for a vote, and then there's a substantive discussion and vote on it. That's what concerns me. That's why I propose to keep it.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
I'm waiting to recognize everybody from the board, and then I'll call for remote participant comments. If you could just hold on a second. Any other comments from the board? Okay, hearing none. Any comments or questions from the remote participants?
Madam Chair, Fred Crimmins.
Go right ahead, Fred.
I'm a Stepping Stones petitioner and supporter. And I had sent a fairly lengthy memo to the Board of Selectmen about a week ago now, on the 19th, indicating an initial offer on April 9th by the Stepping Stones petitioners to withdraw the Stepping Stones COA article at the same time and for the same time period as the 1610 COA article and other capital expenditure articles. And I just want to make sure that that's in the public venue in terms of what was offered on the 9th, and then repeated in writing in my memo to the select board on the 19th. And as far as moving that ahead at this town meeting, I don't think any of the original petitioners or the core petitioners would favor doing so, particularly in the absence of 1610 as a warrant article. I don't know what the mechanics are for making that work, but I think including 1610 as a warrant article item is the wrong message. And I'm really pretty uncomfortable as a citizen with us doing that. I think it sends the wrong message to the townspeople, and I would favor having that opt out at this point in time. And if in fact there is a mechanism that Mr. DeCastro mentioned earlier to defer petition articles to a date certain in the future as a special town meeting, I would guess that might be a good mechanism to solve the problem of petition articles, and in particular the COA article. So that's kind of what I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Crimmins. I believe that the petition article was put forth by petitioners, plural, and an offer could be made on the floor. The selectmen have no real power to take this off of the special town meeting. Annual town meeting. My understanding, though Dean has a little more knowledge of this and might be able to help me out here. But that's my understanding of how it will have to go. Whether there was an offer from a petitioner to me or to anybody to suggest we could do that is, I don't know if there isn't a process to do that unless it's done on the town meeting floor, is my understanding. Dean, do you have?
Madam Chair, I don't know whether, I think there were 14 individuals who signed this petition article for Stepping Stones. I don't know whether if all 14 of them signed a communication to the moderator, I don't know who. I don't know whether they can remove that. I really don't know the law on that. Excuse me. As far as my suggestion earlier that someone could offer a motion, I think you're correct, Madam Chair. That's a motion that could be, and I hope would be made on the floor. None of those petition articles should be discussed substantively at the annual town meeting if we have an annual town meeting in June. And that motion could be made to defer them, to defer the discussion to a date certain. Of course, any of the petitioners themselves could just not offer a motion on any of those articles, but that doesn't preclude someone from the floor from offering a motion, which is my concern. I think the intention, at least speaking for myself, in wanting to keep 1610 Main Street on the warrant is with the clear understanding that it's only there as a protection for that proposal, which is the official position of the Board of Selectmen of the town. Keep that in mind. Stepping Stones Road is a petition project. We're going to hear about it next week, and the Board of Selectmen will make a recommendation on whether to go forward, whether to recommend approval or not, and then it'll go before the Finance Committee. But I'm very concerned about protecting the 1610s from any kind of unfortunate developments at annual town meeting. That's what drives me, but I fully intend to support, if not actually move, deferral of consideration of 1610 to a future town meeting. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm not interested in making an arrangement with the petitioners, between the petitioners and the Board of Selectmen. I have no interest in that whatsoever. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Peter?
From the board.
Yeah,
Peter.
yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly, I understand where Fred's coming from and what he's saying, and he's one, and he's put in, he's put in his words about, making sure 1610 is off, and also the comment that there wouldn't be a problem. The sponsor of that petition hasn't said anything to this board that I know of. And you have 13 other people. So, I have a problem with a petition, not a problem with the petition, but I have a problem with us trying to negotiate something right now on that. And I guess I'm not against keeping it on, understanding what Mr. Nicastro just said right now. We've got another week yet too. So I guess I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I had to.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Corey, is that Corey?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it is Corey. No, this is. I think we're towing the fine line between the mechanics and the politics of it. This is strictly mechanics. This is the keeping 1610 article in play with the what has been explained several times. There's a petition article that at least some of the petitioners feel that they will take no action on, which is I believe is the proper thing to do. And I think the town, I think the board, by removing the 1610 ballot question and the zoning article components, obviously are showing intention that we want to delay the conversation. But the sad mechanics of it is that we need to keep these two sites on the same playing field. So keeping 1610 on the warrant is the most appropriate thing to maintain that even playing field. But I think I don't know how many times we can state it. It's a selectmen's petition, selectmen's article, our preference. In opposition of the petition article, but we're not going to. We recognize the delicate conversation, the input of the public on this, and I can't stress anymore that we will not be moving this, at the meeting.
Okay, so Madam
Chair?
back up a little bit here, because basically what we're trying to do right now is vote the warrant articles. And we're starting to get into this deliberation about stepping stone and council on aging. And that's not the intent of this meeting right now. The intent of this meeting and this agenda item is to vote the warrant as the warrant as we've changed it, removing things from the warrant and adding things in. So if there's relevant discussion to that, then I will listen to it. Otherwise, we'll move forward with a vote. So saying that, any further discussion? Okay, Shauna, can you read back the motion for us, please? Is that possible?
So the motion was to basically to remove the following articles from the annual town meeting warrant, and they were the Collins Center, compensation plan holder, the capital project, stormwater collection, the protective zoning bylaw amendment for 1610 Main Street, the historical town clock, the town clerk archives, the open space Frost Fish Salt Marsh, Revolutionary War Memorial, Pleasant Bay Community Boating, ADA compliant dock, handicap access at beaches, Sears Park, Jackknife Cove Beach, Old Mill Boatyard access stairs, Old Colony Rail Trail milestone marker, Old Colony Rail Trail crossing light, Seaside Links Golf Course invasive species, what's the next one? The Old Harbor Road property reuse, and the general bylaw amendment for date and time of town meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you, Shauna. So we'll take a roll call vote. Selectman Nacastro,
Aye.
Selectman Metters,
Aye.
Selectman Dykens,
Aye.
Selectman Kokolas,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that we close the warrant.
Okay.
Second, Peter.
Any further discussion? Any discussion from the remote participants? Hearing none, I'll take a roll. Selectman Nacastro,
Aye.
Selectman Metters,
Aye.
Selectman Dykens,
Aye.
Selectman Kokolas.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Okay,
Madam Chair,
yes.
I move that we set the date for the 2020 annual town meeting on June 22nd. Do we have to set the place, Jill?
No, the place is already determined to be the Monomoy Regional Middle School gym.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
We need
Second, Peter.
the time. I'm sorry, we didn't put the time. What's the time, Jill? 6 o'clock p.m.?
6 p.m.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any discussion from the remote participants? Hearing none. Selectman Nacastro,
Aye.
Selectman Metters,
Aye.
Selectman Dykens,
Aye.
Selectman Kokolas,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, good job, guys. Anything else on that, Jill, that we had to do?
Yes, so one more thing, I presume you all want to vote to recommend the slate of ATM articles as well?
Haven't we already done that?
Yes.
Did I miss it?
Well,
Your original votes.
wasn't it done previously? We'll have to reopen the warrant to do that, I guess, right? No, I guess we don't have to reopen.
You know, you're right. Let me just see if there was any votes that had anyone missing from it.
I mean, we modified some of the articles, such as the transfer station, in terms of what the scope of the article was, and the OPEB article.
So we did not have a vote from the board on the transfer station project. You placed it, but you didn't vote it.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh.
I moved to reopen the warrant.
Second. Second.
Roll call.
I really don't think you need to reopen the warrant. we've done, well, actually, yeah, we've always done the
No, we
votes.
gotta-
before we close the
Yeah,
warrant.
we
Sorry, go ahead.
You have to.
You have to.
Okay, Selectman DeCastro,
Aye.
Selectman Metters,
Aye.
Selectman Dykens,
Aye.
Selectman Kokolas,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Okay, all right, motion go.
Let's take the ones one by one that we need to refine our recommendation. Vote our recommendation.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Transfer station article. I move that we recommend approval to town meeting for the interim ADA OSHA
Yep.
work.
Good. Second.
Second, okay, discussion. All right, hearing none. Any from the remote participants? Hearing none. Selectman Kokolas,
Aye.
Selectman Dykens,
Aye.
Selectman Metters,
Aye.
Selectman DeCastro,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Okay, OPEB,
Madam Chair, on the OPEB article, I move that we, where is that?
it's on the first page, almost all the way down.
Is there a number to it? I can't.
No number.
Oh, wait, it's on the second page.
Second page.
Okay, the OPEB trust fund, I move that we recommend, well, we've already recommended approval, but I move that the article be revised to 150,000 from the overlay surplus.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any remote discussion from the remote participants? Hearing none, I'll take a roll. Selectman Kokolas,
Aye.
Selectman Dykens,
Aye.
Selectman Metters,
Aye.
Selectman DeCastro,
Aye, and then my understanding, this includes a recommendation of approval.
Yes.
Okay.
yes, okay, and Chair says aye. All right,
Madam Chair, I think the only other one left is the capital, a 5-year capital improvements plan has been reduced to $2,439,345. So I guess we'll recommend approval in that amount. Is that correct, Jill?
Yes.
There is one more in the library.
I'll second that motion.
okay. Any further discussion? Any discussion from the remote participants? Hearing none, I'll take a roll. Selectman Kokolas,
Aye.
Selectman Dykens,
Aye.
Selectman Metters,
Aye.
Selectman DeCastro,
Aye.
Chair says aye.
Madam Chair, on the Eldridge capital project, Eldridge Public Library, that's been reduced now to $701,800. It's $495,600 is coming from the tax rate. So I move that we revise that article with a recommendation accordingly.
Second.
Okay, great. Any further discussion?
Yeah,
And-
that's Peter. That's which of those articles is that the 700? I missed that.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna have we asked that the Board of Governors we're
That's
gonna
true.
relook at that on Wednesday or this week.
That's true.
Is that different or
Well,
I'm missing?
I think, we can go forward with this or not. We decided to go forward with it. I think what we could do is if they say, oh, this could be put off, if Alex or Terry say this could be put off for another year, then I think we just wouldn't offer a motion on the floor of the meeting on that.
Okay, all right. Yep, thank you.
Do we have a second from Jeff? Questions from the remote participants? Hearing none, I'll take a roll. Selectman Kokolas,
Aye.
Selectman Dykens,
Aye.
Selectman Metters,
Aye.
Selectman DeCastro,
Aye.
and the chair says aye.
Madam Chair, I think the only remaining article is the CPA on the library. We would just eliminate masonry and window at this point. It would just be roof, but the amount stays the same, $206,200.
Okay. And that's in already. That's in
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, I don't know if we have to take a vote on that or not, but,
No, leave it.
okay,
Okay,
okay.
all
Have we,
right.
have we missed anything, Shauna or Jill?
So I know the board usually takes a vote on the town budget before the warrant gets printed. We're just not there yet. We still want to do some more work on that. So that's Article 8. Article 9 is the Monomoy Regional School Assessment. We talked to the superintendent today. There might be some adjustments to their budget as well as the Cape Cod Regional Technical High School budget. So I just am not prepared to offer you a recommendation to vote these yet because they might change, but when they change, they will likely get reduced.
Can we close the warrant tonight without that, or do we have to keep it open for another week, in which allows for the prospect that somebody could submit a petition article, but so be it?
With a June 22nd date, it gives us a good month to get everything ready for the printer and to the and for the mailing. I mean, we can ask town council, but I think the board would be remiss not having a vote on budgets that they're putting forward. And I think it's just a timing issue just today to not, I mean, you could recommend the budget if you want and if you agree for it to go down, but you actually haven't even seen the numbers and how it looks, you know, as a warrant article.
I think we need to see the numbers, guys.
So you want to keep the warrant open?
Yep.
Yeah, Peter, I would agree. I thought I heard Jill say we didn't have to accept citizens petitions. Is that true?
No.
No, you have to accept it.
That's what I thought, but
If the petition came in tomorrow, we have to accept it. That's the nuance of having to manage an open town meeting warrant.
So we're not going to vote to close the warrant. Okay,
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Then we'll just move forward.
close it next week. Close it next week, presumably.
Well, we have those numbers. Could be possible. We'd have those numbers next week, Jill.
That would be our goal, just to give us as much time as possible to get it produced.
Great.
Very
Okay.
good.
And next week, we're going to be hearing the report on Stepping Stones Road. So the board would make a recommendation. It would be open to the board to make a recommendation to town meeting on that article, even though we're not going to substantively hopefully discuss that article or 1610 at the town meeting, but it would be in the books to have that recommendation at that time.
Yes, and the remaining petition articles that you don't have a recommendation on, those will be there as well.
Yeah, there are some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
We should discuss those.
Okay. We good?
Good.
Yes.
All right, we'll move on. The last item before we go into executive session is consider change of the Board of Selectmen's meeting date. I brought this up on the agenda to consider changing the Board of Selectmen's meeting from either Monday to Tuesday or doing every other week or at some point. We need to start accommodating some of us that work certain hours and are having a challenge in trying to meet the meeting time one time a month. And so I just wanted to know what the board's thoughts are on this and whether we have any recommendations to move forward.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Peter?
Yep.
I talked to the chair of the planning board. The planning board had historically met on Mondays, right after the Board of Selectmen. And, you know, I can't remember exactly when, but we changed. There was a change. The Board of Selectmen wanted to do Tuesday, and because it was running into the planning board time also. It appears that talking to speaking with the chair, and I guess she's had some discussions with community development, that they could move to Monday and we could take Tuesday, and then we would have every Tuesday at 6 o'clock or whatever time we decide. But she hasn't talked to the board about that, their board. They're going to wait to see what we thought about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Dean.
Yes, I had spoken with Peter over the weekend and suggested that, and I'm glad, Peter, you were able to follow through on that. It seems to me to make the most sense. If that works for those members who are working, we'd go back to our historical Tuesday at 6 o'clock meeting, and then the planning board could go back to Monday. Perhaps we could communicate to the planning board that we'd like to make that switch and then hear back from them and then take a formal vote next week, maybe.
I think that makes sense if everybody's amenable to a Tuesday at 6 p.m.
Well,
Your thoughts?
Yeah,
ahead.
no, that's awesome. It's certainly back to the future. And, I certainly would appreciate the switch, as, I have a conflict every first Monday. In the first Monday of every month, I've got a conflict. So
Okay.
I would really appreciate it.
Okay. Corey, any thoughts on this?
No, I'd like to see what the planning board official position is, because I would prefer to meet on a weekly basis. I'm not looking to do every other week. I think there's too much stuff we have to deal with. But if for some reason Tuesday was not a viable option, I would be amenable to making that first Monday list later as a secondary option. But I'd like to see if the planning board would be willing to do a little rescheduling, because that seems to make a lot more sense for everybody. So,
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I ask Peter, for you, is the planning board meeting, how quickly do we have to get this resolved? Because if it's fairly soon, then maybe the chair of the planning board could simply poll her members. It's a procedural question. It's not a substantive thing. I don't know that they have to have a formal meeting on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that they have meetings already scheduled in May that they probably can't change, at least one or two. I'm not sure. But I agree. I think she could poll the group and see how it comes out. Yeah.
It's just a scheduling thing. So.
Scheduling. It's a scheduling issue. Yeah.
And this isn't something that will need to be addressed until the 1st of June anyway, as far as accommodating Selectman Dykens' schedule being the first Monday of the month. So if we can just relay this to the planning board, Shauna, and get a consensus that I think, or get an idea from them if they're willing, then we can come back and discuss it next week.
Yeah, actually, the first Monday is next week, the 4th. So anyway, I'll do the best I can. You guys don't do anything in your meeting next week, please, and I'll do the best I can to get there when I get there. But
Yes, I thought we were already.
I do have a conflict next week.
Okay, I thought we were already in May for some reason. I guess I missed a week.
No, I love being a selectman. I got to work too, though. It's tough.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I mean, I know it's not the ideal, option, but at least for the next meeting, do we want to just have a 7 o'clock meeting? I know we don't like long, late meetings, but at least for next week, do we start at 7?
Yeah.
I'm amenable to that because there are certain things on the agenda that we really should all be weighing in on.
That's what I'm thinking.
Madam Chair, I'm okay with that, but it depends on if we could streamline next week's proposed. If you look at, can't get it up here. If you look at the
future agenda.
I'm trying to get to that.
Yeah, we have the Stepping Stones presentation with the project team next week, as well as have to vote the budgets too.
Do we have to have the Finance Committee report? Can't that be deferred? And the Community Housing Partnership, can those two items be deferred? And then, so we have the Stepping Stones, which is going to take some time, and finalizing the warrant. Might take a little time, and I think all members should be on board for those two items. The shellfish closure, I suppose that's urgent. I suppose the sailor weights and measures might be urgent. I don't know. I'll defer it to the town manager, but it seems to me the Finance Committee item could be deferred. And the Community Housing Partnership could be deferred.
They're both relevant conversations, so I think we could move them down a few days, a few dates.
So I'd be okay with a 7 o'clock meeting to accommodate Selectman Dykens. I think that's what we should do.
All right, I certainly appreciate that.
Okay. Everybody good with that?
Yeah, I am.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Great. Could I get a motion to move to executive session then?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we go into executive session. This is agenda item 4, executive session, Mass General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21, Number 3. I move that we go into executive session under that rubric to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, all town unions, and the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body with no return to open session.
Thank you, Dean. Do I have a second?
Second, Peter.
Yeah.
Okay, poll everybody. Selectman DeCastro,
Aye.
Selectman Metters,
Aye.
Selectman Dykens,
Aye.
Selectman Kokolas.
Aye.
Chair says aye. Okay, we're going to go into executive session. We'll reconvene as a board in executive session in 5 minutes. And we'll say goodnight to everybody else and
no return to open session.
no return to open session. Thank you very much. Good night, Chatham.